Hello and welcome to this special edition of the OTT Podcast with me, your host, Aonghus Og McAnally, and joining me is Mr. OTT himself, Mr. Joe Cabray. How are you, Joe?
Good. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. I'm looking forward to having a good chat on all things OTT. So, you put a shout out over the last couple of days to hear from the fans, to hear what questions they had on their minds. So hopefully we're going to work through those and get some answers to some of the burning questions on the minds of OTT fans at the moment. The one that struck me most when I was going through these questions to see what we might talk about was just a really simple one. How are you?
I'm good. Since ScrapperMania has been done and completed, I've rested up and recovered from the trauma.
How much does putting on and producing a big show like that take out of you? Is it full attention, all your energy for like a big stretch of time?
Yeah, I suppose like you got to clock in every day and do your work. We 3 shows that weekend: Wolverhampton, Dublin, and Belfast. So just a lot of planning, logistics, and kind of writing as well. But a hell of a lot of work went into it.
That thing of juggling the creative end of it with the logistics and just kind of, your early WrestleMania days there of 3 different cities over 3 different nights, and the practicalities of bringing in workers from all around the world and all around these islands. Are you mad? It's a big thing to undertake.
I like the challenge, but yeah, a little bit crazy. I think you'd have to be. I always say it as well. I think you have to be a little bit crazy to be involved in the wrestling business.
Yeah, I think I'll back that one up too. So the first one, and maybe the most controversial, but let's get in and do it straight away, is how do you feel about the way AEW handled the Moxley situation? And is there a chance of booking Eddie Kingston again, as he seems to always miss overseas bookings such as Progress this weekend? But look, I'm not going to comment on that. But talk to me about how you feel AEW handled the Mox situation.
I think like everyone, I woke up that morning and I had maybe 20-25 screenshots of the poster and people saying, have you seen this? Have you seen this? I reached out to Moxley and, he was like, look, we're going to sort this out. And from that time, it just seemed to take forever. It seemed to take forever and then when it became apparent that he was going to have to pull, it just again dragged on for replacements. And at the same time, I completely understand that you've fans travelling to these shows from even outside Ireland, and they're asking questions and they want answers, and completely understandable. But you don't have the answers because it's just dragging. And I suppose I can see it from AEW's point. They're paying the contract, but at the same point, we're an independent company with a business class flight of 9,000 booked. We are, booked already. Hotels, paid internal flights, paid hotels, work visas, and you're kind of looking at an advertisement and going, we're pretty deep in this.
Yeah.
Getting replacements as well. It just, it was what it was. But at the same point, we spoke to Delta. Delta had allowed us flight credit in Jon Moxley's name until December 31st, 2023, I think. So we spoke to AEW. AEW kind of, they understand it was a bad situation for all involved, and they've expressed about making it up to us. So I have good faith in AEW that they're going to come right and do some sort of makeup, whatever that may be. But yeah, that's kind of where it stands. I'd be quite hopeful as well.
That's what I was going to ask. Am I allowed hope, Joe? Am I allowed hope? If the credit's till December 31st of this year, if you're a betting man, are we saying chances are good?
As I said, I think my faith in AEW is good. They understand that there was a lot of money just dropped on this, and then you have the Eddie Kingston situation, which is more money just dropped. You know what I mean? Which is no reflection of AEW, but it was just, as I think I've said it was probably the most stressful time of my life.
Yeah, a tough pill to swallow with Eddie. Kind of, a replacement for a guy who'd been a fan favourite here at OTT. To have him to lose him at the last minute was a tough one.
I love Eddie, and I think he's always been an absolute pleasure to have in the locker room.
Absolutely, I'll back that one up. Yeah,
very few people, you would never hear anyone speaking badly of Eddie, and I can kind of understand the January issue of him having to pull. But I'm going to say I don't believe the COVID test failure 2 hours before you're supposed to get on a flight. I just don't buy it. And that was a real tough one, because Eddie's supposed to be the makeup to the fans, and he pulls literally less than 24 hours before the show. I don't know what's going on with Eddie. I know he has a hernia issue at the moment, but I just hope whatever's going on with him, he gets sorted. Will we bring him in again? I don't think so. I calculated it again last night. I think we dropped 3,500 on lost flights, hotels, work visas. It's just too much to kind of justify trying it for a third time. It's a lot of money to an independent wrestling company, to just drop 3,500 like that on someone.
That's a lot of tickets sold.
Yeah, well, I mean, lost flights again, lost work visas, lost hotels. It's just too much,
Yeah.
But as I said, like we've always had a good relationship with Eddie, and he's always been a pleasure to have in the locker room. But I think that was a massive letdown. Yeah.
Next question for us. What have the biggest challenges been for OTT since the COVID restrictions ended and live events kind of came back to normal in as much as they have? What have been the toughest things about getting the show back on the road?
I think talking to other event promoters as well, it's people are reluctant to buy tickets in case, they test for COVID or someone around them tests for COVID. That's been a challenge. I think as well, the way insurance is, so we've been in business since 2014. We've never had any issues with insurance, but I think a lot of insurers pulled out of the market and it's become an issue with the smaller shows. So that's why there's been no contenders, because to pay for insurance is just so expensive for some of those shows. It's just not financially viable.
Yeah.
You're just, you're dropping so much money just to pay for insurance. So they're kind of another thing as well, I think, is, again, just the venue issues, which has always been in Ireland,
Yeah.
Like the Complex is a great venue, but it's an absolutely extortionate venue to run. It's so expensive to run. I suppose that, they're the challenges. Another challenge I think as well is that when you say to venues who want to do a pro wrestling event, I think this is the issue as well with the insurance companies. They think of a ring and they think MMA and they think boxing, and they don't understand that we're just completely different.
Yeah.
We're just completely different entities. It's not the same fan base and stuff like that. So they're a couple of the issues, I suppose, venue issues, and at the moment we're having slight insurance issues. The insurance is there obviously, but it makes it very, very hard financially to run smaller events, which is needed, because I think the issue is that the younger guys aren't getting ring time.
Yeah.
And unfortunately they can do all the training in the gym, but unless you're out there doing it live, you're not going to learn, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a true story. These next series of questions I've kind of amalgamated a bit, because essentially it was, when are you coming back to my town? So questions are, back to Derry, when are we coming back to Cork? What about Carlow, Kilkenny, Waterford, Wexford? Another reference for Limerick. Essentially, are we hitting all 32 counties this year? How much can OTT feasibly go on the road?
I mean, that's always been the plan, is to kind of start hitting other towns. So just Derry, we want to keep running Derry. It's always been a great wrestling city. But I think the venue there, I think they're having some issues inside the venue. So they might be closing for a couple of months, but we're getting some renovation issues, I think.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been hard to rebook a date there. Neptune Stadium, I think OTT have always wanted to go to Cork. We went to Neptune Stadium. They're just a hard place to deal with. Neptune Stadium, it kind of put me off from there again. But we'll see. But again, there's an issue, like, where do you run in Cork? It's just the Irish issues with too many hotels and not enough art spaces.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that I think maybe as a fan you don't necessarily think about. You need to have a venue that is big enough to put enough of a crowd in to make it financially viable. You need a license because people like to have a pint at these shows. You need a ceiling height clearance that allows someone like Damien Corvin stand on the top rope and jump off. You need locker room space enough for maybe 30, 35, 40 people, depending on the size of the show. You also need a venue that'll play on all four sides, which is really hard to come by. I mean, I know from the performance venues around the country, there's very, very few that play in the round. There's a much bigger checklist than, say, just a stand-up comedian looking to go into the local arts centre. Yeah, it's a bigger ask for you, and so just juggling it just takes a lot more.
And then you kind of look at some of these venues, and it's like, wow, it's so expensive to run that venue, and I have to pay out this much before I've even put a wrestler in the ring. So there's some of the issues that you kind of have to take into account, but. I did like. I thought the event we did at Neptune Stadium was really good. I think not having, as you said, like a bar license. You can get a bar license, but of course it's really expensive and stuff like that. And it's just, I don't know. It as you said, it's just a lack of really good venues in this country, which has just always been an issue.
Yeah, but I think the good thing is that you're still committed to taking stuff outside of Dublin. Certainly, I mean, we've seen with the Belfast shows and now with the Wolverhampton shows as well, that the commitment and the impulse is still there to take the shows out to people.
And as I said, it's very important that we start doing the smaller kind of contender shows again, and that's going to be something that we're going to work on. But I think we've contenders now booked in for January 4th.
June 4th?
June 4th.
Okay. Can we expect a WrestleRama this year?
We're currently working on it. It's not 100% though. Summertime is just a hard time. But yeah, we are working on it. So if we have news, we will post it quite soon.
Excellent. So here's a question about the origin of the Wolverhampton shows, like how they came about, whose idea was it? It's a big, ambitious thing to start running internationally. I know you've got experience of running internationally before, back in the AWR days, but what was the impulse around particularly getting back to Wolves and kind of that iconic hangar venue?
I think Wolves has always been a great wrestling city, but it was kind of neglected. There was no one kind of doing really good wrestling shows there post-COVID. So we're talking to Trent Seven at the time, and kind of said like let's try and bring wrestling back to what they call the Wrestle House. Yeah, it's been quite an adventure. And hopefully we can, continue on doing more shows in Wolverhampton.
Have you been surprised by how quickly the Wolves fans got behind OTT and came out and turned out in such big numbers?
I think there's just an incredible amount of talent as well there, and we showcase it really well and we book really well. So no, not surprising. I think the shows there that we've ran in Wolverhampton so far have been quite strong. Yeah. What's
been interesting for me is if you think back to the ScrapperMania 2 days and the centenary of the Rising, it's very much Ireland versus England.
Yeah.
It feels like that old divide isn't so much there anymore. That kind of OTT has grown a bit outside of Ireland. That we're now crossing the border up north. We're going across to the UK. It feels like it's that's just kind of grown as an operation. And kind of that 0121 gang and whatever else. They're kind of they're all one of our own now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of have that branch of the Dan Maloney and the man like DeReese and Trent, flying that flag and and helping OTT expand as well, I think is really important. I think that's sometimes what's lacking, especially on the Irish side, is just that work ethic to grow. It's when OTT was starting, there was everyone was kind of like, well, how can we get this over the line? How many tickets, Joe, have we got left? Well, I've only got 50 tickets. Well, what can we do as a team? Kind of sometimes I feel at times that you just kind of have a lot of people saying, well, what am I doing on the show today? I think it speaks volumes when you're at the complex and you kind of see the same people rolling around in the ring every time and the other people are off in the coffee shops. I think it says a great deal. So probably needs to be a bit of a kick in the ass as well sometimes. Yeah.
Interesting. Have you considered doing collaborations with any other promotion within Ireland or the UK as a potential one-off or other show? I know Santino Marella started speaking a little bit about the potential of a TNA OTT crossover. Is that the kind of thing that appeals to you?
Yeah, I think it'd be a really interesting thing to look at. But I think most independent promotions, like, I think Rev Pro and Progress, and I know Progress are working with WXW kind of coming up soon, but I think for the most part, most independent promotions are kind of focused on their own brand.
Yeah.
So there's never, very, very seldom you kind of have independent promotions kind of looking to collaborate, but they're all just, most of them are just focused on their own brand, which I completely understand as well.
Yeah, you've got to carve out your space in the market. Yeah. Belfast always seems to get a lot of big names. Obviously, with WWE and AE snapping up the majority of talent, can't be easy to get as many names as before. But with that being said, Wolverhampton seems to get more than Belfast at the moment. Is there a chance that future Belfast shows can be on the same scale as like of Wolves and Dublin? Is that purely a question of scale, that you can put nearly 2,500 in Dublin and over 1,000 in Wolves, and Belfast is closer to 500 or 600?
Absolutely, that is the issue. We've actually spoke. Some of the guys on the team have actually spoke about possibly doing WrestleRama in Belfast as kind of an exclusive. The problem as well is that like Belfast has the same issues with venues.
Yeah.
So I think the Europa is a brilliant venue.
I do too.
The capacity is 500. We did look at Mandela Hall is reopened, but it's actually smaller.
Right.
I think it's, they told us for scale, I think you're probably looking at 400. And then the next place is Ulster Hall, which is unfortunately just an extortionately expensive venue to run.
Yeah.
That's a big issue as well, I think, is because of lack of venues on the island. These venues are able to charge which is not, it's not viable financially.
Yeah.
You can try and do these shows, but you won't be in business for too much longer,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I don't necessarily agree that Belfast gets shortchanged in terms of the big international stars. That's its own thing. I know there's transport links that are different out of Belfast and they are out of Dublin, but I don't think they have been particularly that shortchanged. But also, the really important thing for me, since the restart post-COVID, is that I get the sense that the Belfast crowd maybe had a half a sense in the past that they were more kind of spot shows and that, not necessarily canon. And then once the restrictions lifted there before Dublin, we were kind of running there more consistently. There were big storyline angles being done there. There were title changes there. And I think they bought into the idea that, no, you're not being shortchanged here. We're giving you grade A OTT quality. Yeah. We're not pulling anything back on these shows.
I mean, if you look in the past, we've had Pac in Belfast. We've had Osprey in Belfast.
Walter as well.
Walter several times. Matt Cardona.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Gangrel, I don't really know that.
Yeah, with the exception of flying in Roman Reigns, I don't know what more we can be doing.
Like, for instance, you can't put a Rob Van Dam in the Europa.
Right.
It's just not viable.
Yeah, okay.
And even at that point, it's kind of hard to put even some of the bigger names in there, but we've done it. But that's just the way it is. Yeah. And I suppose as well, like, if you put, say for instance, you do put a big indie star in. And you do run the Ulster Hall, you're probably talking 60, 70 quid a ticket. It's just not viable. And I can't ask that of the fans either, but that's the issues,
Yeah, juggling that balance between kind of giving them what they want and going, look, it's going to cost what it's going to cost.
Overall, we want to try and get to as many major cities as we possibly can, but we're not going to be in business if we continuously do these massive shows that are not financially viable.
Yeah, I have you. Another Belfast show. Can we get Lizzie and more talent from across the water on Belfast shows, please? As well as see more of the likes of Belfast Zone talent like Tucker. So more from across the water, more of Belfast Zone. Is that just two fingers up to us Mexicans south of the border down here then?
I think we kind of covered that in the previous question.
Yeah.
Love Tucker, but the last time we reached out, Tucker's just had other shows.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Another shout here, more of Ricky Knight Jr. I presume he's still in the plans.
Yeah, absolutely. Great talent.
Hell of a wrestler. Do you think we'll get any more Joe Cabray matches in OTT? You and Sammy last year was excellent. And then I guess as a follow on for that, just before the pandemic, we almost got the biggest and greatest tag team ever. Their words, not mine. Is there any chance we'll ever see Joe and Be Cool together again? So I guess, first off, is there going to be more Cabray in OTT, in ring action? And then secondly, is there ever the possibility of Cabray and Be Cool teaming up?
I've said this before. I don't have a hankering to get back in the ring.
Yeah.
I'm very, very happy not being in the ring. It's incredibly stressful to run. That's why I kind of walked away as being an in-ring performer in OTT. It's too tough to run a show and be on the show.
Yeah.
Having said that, I did think at the time the storyline was really good and it made great sense for me and Sam to have a match. But to run a stadium show and to be on it yourself as well and to deal with the logistics and to deal with meet and greets and then try and put a match together, I just don't feel like I can give my 100% because you have to be very focused when you're having wrestling matches, and you're not focused because you're focused on how am I getting everyone to Belfast tomorrow, what time is the meet and greet starting at, who's doing the door for that, is the merchandise set up, what am I doing in this match with Sam, and then I did the match with Sam and I broke my hand and I had to drive then the next day to Belfast to the show, and then the following day I had to drive to Wexford. Thank God I drive an automatic. It was just so just to answer it, like, if there's a really, really good storyline that made sense and it worked for everybody and it can improve the roster, I can do matches. I mean, I'm 40 now. I'm still in good shape. My hip is shot, but I can still go. I mean, I did some shows in Germany and I did a match there a while ago in Berlin, maybe this time last year, and I really liked that match.
Right.
But I didn't have any stresses. I just had to show up with my gear bag and sit there and, you know, go over. You know, Barry was amazing when he was around. You know, it's unfortunate he's not around.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the iconic talents of OTT, you know, there from day one, so integral part to so many of those massive moments. Think about the big Gymnasties tag team title win, pop in the Tivoli and all that kind of stuff. Do you feel him as a big loss on the roster?
Massive. I think there's very few people that do comedy well. I think, especially now, I think there's a lot of talking in the ring, you know, a lot of people shouting to the audience. And to me, that's just not wrestling. Wrestling is kind of telling a story through movement. But when you're speaking constantly to the crowd, it's kind of like, ugh. And then you kind of see as well this kind of shock comedy that's come into wrestling as well. It's like, well, we're going to wrestle, and then 5 minutes in, we're just going to play music, and all the wrestlers are going to stop communicating, and we're all just going to dance together. It's just like, you're kind of conditioning the audience to just pop for me every time we do something outrageous. It's not my style of comedy. It's not Barry's kind of, you know, Be Cool style of comedy. I think Be Cool was probably one of the most talented people, and he was it's such a massive loss to OTT. I think getting back to it again, I think that is an issue that we need to look at in OTT, is that there's a lack of comic relief on the shows as well. It's no one's fault, but I think majority of people on the shows just want to go out and be great wrestlers, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think you need that kind of comedy element, and I do think it's kind of missing at the moment. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I mean, I always like about pro wrestling that it's the 3-ring circus. And Absolutely. If you like the flippy luchadors, or you like the big strong, you know, big demos versus Bonesaw, or else you like the comedy match or the tag match, or that there's something there for everyone, that we keep it as vibrant and as vital and as different as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Be Cool, man. What an absolute worker, and sad to see him go. But life is how life is.
Yeah.
Is there one particular OTT match that you weren't involved in that you look at that and you think, oh geez, I would have loved to have been in there?
Probably the really shit ones. Yeah. Like, definitely not. I mean, if I was in, you know, your favourite OTT matches, if I was in there, I probably would have completely, you know, changed the dynamic of the match. But the ones that are just the drizzlers, you're like, I would have loved to just
get in there, grab him by the scruff of the neck.
Grab him, what are you thinking? Why would you do that? Like, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
No, one thing I don't want is Jon Cabray shooting on me. Who is the biggest prick you've ever booked? And please don't say me.
Big Damo.
Stop that.
No, Big Damo.
He's the biggest.
Yeah, he's probably the nicest guy to have in the locker room.
Something else.
I have to say, and I've said this before, I think the deal with OTT is that everyone is treated so well. We always have like nice accommodation. We make it as easy as possible, and I think people really respect that. So I've, you know, maybe back in the AEW War days, there was a couple of pricks, even though they were still getting treated really, really well. But on the indie scene today, like, you know, it's just when I broke in, it's a totally different scene. There was a much heavier kind of drug scene. Today everyone's just teetotal, and it's great to see. But it was a very different wrestling business when I broke in. Today, most people on the show just want to have their match and, you know, go out and even just go for food. It's just a totally different. Everyone today, I have to say, is just, they're all amazing.
Yeah, they're a good old gang. So the next question to that is then, who's your favourite person to book?
Like, Sky Too Hottie is amazing to have in the locker room. Big Damo is amazing to have in the locker room. There's so many just people that bring good energy, and I think that's really, really needed. One
of the things I've noticed about Damo is the way he goes about passing on knowledge and advice to other people. You know, not throwing it down anybody's throat, but kind of letting people come to him and just handling it in a really clear, succinct way. I think he's a fabulous influence to have around.
Speedball as well comes to mind. You know, Speedball will be obviously trying to put the most complicated match together with somebody, but then will also overhear somebody in the corner, someone that doesn't have the experience, and he'll come over to them and say, maybe you could go about it, do this, this and this. You know what I mean? Those are the people that are, you know, there's some people that just kind of clock in and they sit on their phone, and it's not as enjoyable to have them around. And I have to say, they're very far and few between. But like, for instance, like the Irish School of Wrestling, it actually loses money at times. You know what I mean? It's just being in Dublin City, the rents are so expensive, but it's a group of people who are passing on their knowledge, and I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, for me, it's, as I said, I've said this on podcasts before. Like I've got to have, you know, been in coffee shops with Bret Hart and just talk. You know, I've been in, you know, cars with Liger, you know, and bought him a Red Bull and have those, you know, just these amazing times that, you know, and if I can pass some knowledge on to some people and help them out to get them where they need to be, well then, you know, I feel that's really, really important. It's also important to keep the business of wrestling alive in Ireland, and I think that's really, you know, important for me to continue on that.
Who would you like to bring into OTT, and what would be your dream match to have in OTT?
I don't know. I've always said Okada. I don't know. I'll probably stick with Okada. I still think it's something on the bucket list that I'd love to tick, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen at this point. Maybe.
You know, I want Jake the Snake and I want Kevin Nash.
Yeah. Kevin Nash was only I listened to his podcast and he was laughing as to how much his fee is at the moment. These guys, like, I mean, that's the thing as well. Like, we used to get such a massive influx of amazing American indie talent, like your Keith Lees and stuff like that. But what's happened now is that there's so many promoters post-COVID in the States that these guys don't really need to come to Europe. We had Matt Riddles, we had the Sammy Callahans, we had the Keith Lees just roaming around backstage. And I was talking to Trent Seven about it. Like, he goes like, remember back in the day when you just have Keith Lee in a random 6-man tag? You know what I mean? It's insane. It's just, but at the time, it's great for the American indie wrestlers. Most of them now are all being signed up. Some signed up before they're even ready. And then there's just so many American indie companies at the moment that are putting on shows. Yeah. So you don't have that massive influx of top American indie talents anymore.
I have you. Can we have a Royal Rumble?
Absolutely. It has to happen. I think I've said this before. It has to happen. It's definitely in the works.
Amazing.
But I'd like to do it in a big way and properly. I don't want to just throw a Royal Rumble in the complex. I want to do it in a really good, big way and have surprises and, you know, kind of figure out logistically how it can be done. But it's definitely in the works.
Because you're the generation of like the old school Royal Rumble, like Demolition coming down and battering the heads off each other. I think if and when you do get a crack at it, you are going to go big or go home.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that needs to be done big though.
Yeah. Contenders. Are we getting back to regular contender shows and or more regular PG shows for people bringing the kids along?
That's been the issue. As I said, we've been in business since 2014, never had an issue, but the insurance has just gone through the roof, you know. And insurance brokers are quoting us as if we're an MMA show. Yeah. So, you know, we've people working on it. We are doing, as I said, Contenders June 4th. It's just, again, making it financially viable. Yeah. But I think the Contenders show on June 4th is going to be really good because we're running a camp that weekend. So you're going to see a lot of people who have travelled, you know, from France or Spain or Italy on those shows. Yeah. And they're going to be mixing it up with the, you know, the top level OTT guys. So it should be a really, really good show.
Great. This is when last time we were talking, you started about have booking meetings and put plans in place and roadmaps where the stories are going to go. How far ahead are you now in knowing where things are going? You're always planning a good bit ahead, even just the simple logistics of booking venues and how far in advance that is. Yeah. You're always, I don't know, is it 6 to 9 months? Is that a reasonable time frame for where your brain is going on stuff, or further?
In around the 6 to 9. I'm no longer booking the shows by myself, so I book them with other people. I've been doing that maybe, I think I started at the beginning of the year,
right, booking
shows with other people. It's been good. It's been good to kind of have other eyes on the booking. I think the ScrapperMania build that we did, I was very happy with. I think we tried our best, and I think Matthew played a blinder in making all the matches as special and mean something. That's what it is. And I think the problem as well I think the problem at the moment is that people are not putting out content. They're not putting out promos. So
this is within the roster.
We're in the roster essentially, but if you don't have an emotional connection to someone on the roster, then you're not really going to be interested in their matches.
Yeah.
It's been an issue. It's been said many times. So you can't have radio silence from ScrapperMania to the next show in April.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. So maybe at times we're just going to have to change up the roster. But that's been something as well that we're looking at. Just putting out more content.
Yeah.
It's astounding that there's so many people in Irish wrestling that go to wrestling school, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever, 2-3 nights a week, and yet they can't understand as to how Be Cool got so over.
Yeah.
They can't understand as to why Sam, who's in the business less than a year, is over. It's because they're banging out really good content.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I say to the students all the time, I'd much prefer you to come and train once a week and spend 2 days trying to make content. Try and get familiar with some editing software. Try and do a free YouTube course on recording and editing. I traveled the world doing Lucha Ward promos. It just doesn't seem to click with some people. That you're kind of, a wrestling school can really teach you how to take the bumps and stuff like that. But you gotta take care of your own stock and get yourself over, so people are emotionally involved in whatever match you may be involved in.
Yeah, it's the one thing that always struck me, that in terms of how you might set yourself apart, trying to break through, or like either break in initially, or to set yourself apart once you have broken in, and like in terms of how hard it is to put on 20 pounds of lean muscle, or how hard it is, or how expensive it would be to get like really flashy gear. But now there's no one that doesn't have a 4K camera in their phone in their arse pocket. Yeah. You could be knocking out promos left, right and centre, like defining your character, getting people to get the emotional connection with you, and helping to move tickets. It feels like it's a no-brainer.
I'd say this as well, though, and this would probably be very surprising to people. To fully understand wrestling, it takes a lot. It takes many years to fully understand, and I actually get it. I get what wrestling is. I would say there's probably, on one hand, you can count the amount of people in Irish wrestling that fully comprehend what wrestling is and how it needs to be done. And, there's so few people. Then you look at like people like Zach Gibson when he was around, and Pete Dunne, they fully understand. Going back to a conversation we had many years ago where you were saying, you got to book this guy again, this guy's great. And we kind of said, well, look at who they've all been in the ring with. Pete Dunne understood that his job as the heel was to go out and get as much heat as he can, make the fans dislike him. And he was also to try and make the babyface, whatever way he bumped or whatever way they built the match, to get the babyface over. That was his job. Yeah. And then eventually people kind of like going, Pete Dunne is the common denominator in these matches, you know what I mean?
It took a while for that penny to drop for me.
But also, like, then eventually will get him over as well, you know what I mean? Because he fully understands what wrestling is. And as I said, in Irish wrestling, there's probably a handful of people that fully get it.
Yeah, fascinating. If you got any living wrestler to attend an OTT show, who would it be?
Living?
Yeah.
Moxley would be great. But AEW are going to come clean and good on that one, I reckon.
Yeah. Will we ever have Becky?
Maybe. She's really busy. I did speak to her, but it's been a while ago when I spoke to her. Finn Balor did send that video at one point. Who knows? Interesting.
Here's a shout for Chris Masters. Did you ever book Chris Masters?
I love Chris Masters. I used to do so many tours with him, and again, another guy that's just a good guy to have in the locker room. Yeah.
Okay, that could be the future. Do you remember a few years ago when you turfed lads out for being drunk and throwing things in the stadium? Can you give us an insight on the before or after of that? It was actually gas. I think the fools got riled up by Sterling Gibson and Sanders of the Rapture, and you marched them on out. I think I was busy on commentary at the time, so I didn't.
You didn't have my back. No?
I missed that one.
I actually do remember that. I am very proud of our fans, and I'm so proud that we've never had an incident at our events. Never ever had an incident at our events. Never been a fight at the shows. They're just passionate wrestling fans.
Yeah.
But at the same point, I didn't want to set that standard that says come to an OTT show and it's completely okay for you to throw a drink at the ring. It just, absolutely not. The thing as well is, like, when you chuck a drink at the ring, you make the ring slippy, and then somebody else could get injured.
Yeah.
I just don't want to set that, to say, come to OTT and it's a free-for-all. Yeah. So that's why they were marched out and made an example of. I just won't have that.
Yeah, and clearly hasn't happened.
And I think the fans as well were looking at them going, what a bunch of assholes, you know.
Well, that's all reasonable then. I'd love to hear of a typical day of an OTT show, from booking and producing the talent and all the hats that you wear on the given days, especially when things go wrong. Do we want to talk about that?
So, for instance, like, that's what I was talking about. Like, you know, when Eddie Kingston can't make the show and you've 24 hours, less than 24 hours notice, it completely rejigs the entire show. So dealing with that. A typical OTT day is maybe just, you know, loading up the ring, getting to the venue, setting it up, looking at logistics in terms of how people are getting from the airport to the show, kind of visualizing the show and kind of looking at what issues you might encounter. We work with really good production guys, so they're kind of left to their own devices. They you know, focus the lights, thank God. But it's funny, like, when the Tivoli days were around, I was actually up the ladder hanging the projector and trying to think of a match with, you know, Tommy Ends, who was duck a kick, take it, you know what I mean? Just kind of like putting the finishing touches on the show. There's always something on show day that will happen. Or you will think of something and say, look, maybe we need to get a promo so we can play it before the show to explain this. But yeah, I take it in my stride. I've been doing it now forever. You know, I've been doing wrestling shows since I broke in, essentially. So when I broke into wrestling, we had a wrestling school, but there was no one promoting shows. So from the get-go, I broke into it as a promoter as well. And just not allowing myself to get too stressed about it, you know. I used to, back in the TV days, I was not nice to be around, and it wasn't nice for me, you know. Just trying to manage your stress levels and kind of accepting as well, there's absolutely nothing I can do about this. So there's no point in me throwing my energy at it, you know. There's no point in me being frustrated about this and this. What's the best solution that we can to fix it? And then, as I said, we do have a lot of good crew on the roster that are there setting up the ring, setting up merchandise, and kind of working as a team. Yeah. I mean, obviously the things that you need to be worried about, that in terms of, as you put a card together, it's not just about booking wrestlers who are available for that date. It's then, how do you put that card together? How do you build kind of the roller coaster track of that card, where the opening match is the opening match, then the tag is this, the triple threat is that way. Where do we have the comedy match? Where do we have the big heavy hitters? Where do we give them a break and an interval and whatever else? I think that's the kind of thing that maybe a lot of fans, it doesn't occur to them, that it's not just, well, here's the wrestlers who are available, let's throw them on the card. That it's in the way that you would kind of script a movie, that you build the experience for the people through that night. You got to bring them up and bring them down. Yeah, you take them on a kind of roller coaster. And I used to say this as well. I visualize the shows before they happen, and I kind of see, like, okay, that match has just ended. What's the kind of emotion of the crowd? Are they tired? Are they, you know, what do they need from the next match? You know. So yeah, building a card that kind of works. The tournament was quite challenging. Upon reflection, like, you know, obviously we didn't, you know, foresee that Sean would get injured. I think as well that really kind of hurt the show. It's unavoidable, but I think as well it's a bit too much reality for people. When someone legitimately gets injured, it's like, you know. Yeah, the thing for me that struck me on the night was, you know, ordinarily, okay, look, as famously, this ain't ballet, we pick up injuries, you find a way to go home and get it done. But obviously for this specifically being in the tournament format, Max taking the injury has knock-on implications for further matches through the rest of the card, so the whole card has to pivot a bit at that stage, and it throws it off kilter. As you said, you very carefully crafted this roller coaster for the audience, and now we're it's totally different.
Can we go real peek behind the curtain and RKJ calling the audible in the ring for finishing off with Bullet Smith? But I mean, that's done. So that's done more times than you'd ever know. I mean, I always say this as well, like, if you ever get the chance to stand behind the curtain, you'll always see guys apologize. Oh, I'm so sorry we missed that, and oh, I didn't know what you meant there, and I shouldn't have done this, I probably should have done that. And there's so much that goes wrong in wrestling matches, but these guys are just so talented that they're able to cover up, and it's a testament as well to Ricky Knight that he was able to, you know, do that. And it was great as well to see, you know, Matthew get an opportunity that he took well. Yeah, because, you know, I mean, he came to the venue with,
not he's at that venue expecting when this show happens, maybe he's not expecting to go out there and perform. Yeah. So yeah, it's and that's a lot of pressure for a young guy. But I do think, as you said, that had so many. I won't go too far into the implications that it had, but it did have such a knock-on effect to affecting other matches on the card. Yeah. It's like, I think it really hurt the show, unfortunately.
What is your response when someone asks, is wrestling fake?
I don't know. I mean, I say, are you the kind of guy that goes to the cinema and tells everyone, this isn't real? I mean, when you say that, I kind of think that it gives you the level of the person you're speaking to. So I probably just don't want to engage with them. You're saying something that's been so obvious. Yeah.
Tom Cruise doesn't really die at the end of this movie.
You know what I mean? Tom Cruise, it's just, give me a break. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you considered bringing wrestler-themed drinks to the complex? I'm sure Session Bot has, 100 ideas about different cans and cocktails you could be doing. I guess, with something like that, is there a question more broadly on OTT merch and what part of the business model that is? And what have you ever been surprised by what the fans have gone for in terms of merch? And they go, I thought they would want caps or foam fingers, or the program from the recent Scrapper show seems to have been a huge success.
Yeah, and we'd always wanted to do a program. It's just very hard to get someone. Be Cool wrote the whole thing, which is amazing. But just getting someone to write it.
Yeah.
And Be Cool kind of likes, he kind of likes to have that kind of outlet. So it was great for him. And then Jon Moxly designed it. So just getting those talents to actually put it together. But I'm really happy how it all turned out. And I think the idea is to kind of make them collectors items. So we want to release 3 a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think then, in 5 years' time, you can open up the first OTT program and kind of realize that's where we were at that time,
How fortunate do you feel to have the likes of Jon Moxly knock around, or Matthew Macklin? You talk about turnaround times in independent pro wrestling. There's no one on the planet has their wrestling shows turned around as quickly as you and Macklin do. Yeah. It's a huge bonus, I think, to the product of the company, that fans know, okay, if I can't be in Wolverhampton on a Saturday, I'll be watching it in my house on Tuesday evening. Yeah.
It's amazing, and I'm so blessed, I suppose. I don't think it'd be possible to know if you didn't have those talented people around. Even yourself on commentary, I think, just adds so much to telling the story. When wrestlers are kind of not there fully, they're still learning. To have someone like yourself and Jamie on commentary that's able to tell the backstory is so important. To have Matthew who loves wrestling, he loves DL wrestling, but he also has an eye as to what gets him excited. So he's able to kind of look at a promo and say, well, what would get me excited in this, and then John as well always gets the good snaps as well, which is so important. That's why our posters are so nice.
We have a question here on barriers and queuing systems, particularly in Belfast. Is that something you can? I know you always take any concerns of the fans very seriously. Yeah,
I think next time we'll just have someone sit downstairs, one of our crew sit downstairs and oversee it. It's just been a constant complaint. I don't know why people can't queue. That's astounding to me. So, I don't know. I don't know. I will have someone at the next Belfast show. They will sit downstairs, and if anyone has any issues of people skipping, they can say they were skipped, and we'll sort it out there and then.
Grand, sounds good. Can't say fairer than that. Any plans for a wrestling school in Northern Ireland? There was talk about in Lisburn, maybe, possibly Bonsaw and Corvin having a school. Could they run a school up north?
I think there was. The guys originally had a school. It's just, as I said, it's the School of Irish Wrestling is non-profit. It's just a bunch of people giving back. I will say that I think the problem is that there's a lot of schools, and even they don't understand what wrestling is. They're teaching people moves. And I think there's, when you do look at it, the talent on the OTT shows is coming through the School of Irish Wrestling. They're so far advanced than what's, the other wrestling companies out there. And it's basically because there's, they're not being coached properly. Wrestling is about selling.
Yeah.
That's that's all it is. Roman Reigns and John Cena, they don't do moves that nobody else can do.
Yeah.
They do the same moves, but they're selling. They're able to sell. Wrestling is all about selling, and it's people, even in the wrestling business, they don't understand that. So you'll go to a wrestling school and they think that, you know, well, if I can hit this 450, I'm going to get booked. It's like, you're not going to get booked. People who send me highlight reels of themselves saying, can you book me? It's like, I don't want to see your highlights. I want to see how you sell. Can you convey emotion? Jordan was like so good at that. I always go back to saying, a true testament is like Will Ospreay and Scotty Davis, and also, you know, Walter and Will Ospreay as well had a match there. Now, I think the majority of fans know at the time. I think I said Jordan and Scotty Davis, didn't I?
Yeah.
If you watch that match, I think it's free on YouTube. People know at that point Jordan Devlin was at the top. You know, people know that Jordan's probably not going to be losing to Scotty Davis now. But at the same point, they sold so well that people go, oh, maybe there's a chance here. Bonesaw and Walter had a match as well. You know what I mean? Again, the two guys made a match. True selling. It was true selling. It wasn't true moves. They created emotion through the movement. You know, that's what wrestling is. And unfortunately, there's so many wrestling schools, not just in Ireland, around Europe, they don't get it. You know, and they're just teaching moves. And then when they come there, you realize this person cannot sell. Yeah. They don't know how to sell. And, you know, that's why, you know, if you want to get on OTT shows, you have to come train me, because I would say 95% of the people who come through the door of other wrestling schools, they have absolutely no concept of what selling is. They have all the moves. Yeah. And they're just unable to sell. You know what I mean? And it starts through when a wrestler walks through the curtain. What are you selling me about yourself? What does your music sell to me? So many wrestlers are picking songs that they just like. Yeah. Your music.
This will make me look cool.
Yeah, your music. Like, look at Shane Strickland. When he comes out to that song, you know there's absolutely no one cooler than him in that entire building. Yeah. He's selling that to you. You know what I mean? Through his movement. You can't have a match like, you know, like Walter and Devlin without unbelievable selling. You know what I mean? Selling that you're in trouble, selling that you're winning. How do you do those? Most people are using the moves. You know what I mean? You don't. You create a match through emotion. What, like Will Ospreay always says, what's the story of the match that we're trying to get across? And now let's put the moves together that we can tell the story to create that emotion. Yeah. It's at the same point as well. Like I was blessed enough to have, you know, traveled and been in the ring with so many great wrestlers from WWE as well. Like I've wrestled so many great, privileged to be in the ring with them. But I also then went to the Performance Center and I trained there. Yeah. Where they'll tell you straight out, it's just selling. That's all you need to learn here. You know what I mean? There's no one in the Performance Center learning how to do moonsaults, and you know, it's just selling. And it's unfortunate as well that there's so many schools that just they haven't grasped that.
Let's move on to a more nuts and bolts one. What's the crack with Eventbrite? We're currently not on Eventbrite. We've moved platforms for the moment. It wasn't making sense.
We're going to try Universe for a while. Again, I'm not married to Universe either, but for me, Eventbrite was just like, there's no one there. There's just no one working. It's, you know, it's old. It's behind the times, and there is absolutely no. There's when you mail them, there's just no one there. It's astounding how far Eventbrite has dropped since COVID. It's just like they never came back. Right. You know, it's just like the lights are on, but there's no one there, and it became too much of a headache. You know,
and for you running the business, you just need to know that, you know, in terms of cash flow and everything else, they're going to be there handling what they need to be handling for you.
It's just like integrations. You know, like you're paying a fee for tickets, and there's, you know, the integrations have even stopped. There's, you know, the integrations with Google were really bad and stuff. It just became an absolute nightmare, and there's an incredible amount of incompetency on Eventbrite. Right. That just said, I gotta go from this.
Sammy D had mentioned that OTT will be relying more on local talent in the future. Is that the official stance? I mean, look, is that all this talk in ring that we've had of OTT 2.0, Irish Wrestling 2.0, that's not just an angle. That is a real shift in focus for you as we're working through these next few shows. Is that the plan?
Absolutely. As I said, I'd like to have more contender shows, more smaller shows around the country, and bring it up. I think there's Like, look at Renzo Rose since COVID. Look at Sam. We've already created these guys. Look at Matthew Smith, another guy that hung in there with the likes of Carlito. LJ, it's just gets better every show. But it also as well, like LJ would tell you, what he learned from just being in the ring with Pac was just unbelievable. So I think that's it as well. You do need to have those top level guys to work with the guys, and then Lee can then pass on what he's learned. The Trent Sevens, another unbelievable talent in the locker room, having matches with people, and then elevating the guys around them. So it is important to have a high level of Irish wrestling, push Irish wrestling, but unfortunately you're always going to need those top level indie guys to pass on what they're learning.
Yeah.
And the problem as well, I've said this as well in Ireland, is that the guys aren't getting enough ring time.
Yeah.
So when you have somebody like a Michael Oku or a Leon Slater who's out there, or a man like DeReese, you just know his calendar's like 20 days of the month he's out there working somewhere. They're on, and it's really important to have those guys in the locker room passing on the knowledge. Aussie Open as well, the latest, wrestling always changes. Little bits of like psychology changes that are working as well in wrestling, because wrestling is very psychology based.
Yeah.
Putting a match together and how to bring the audience, on a story. The psychology is so important to understand. Yeah.
How do you personally book new wrestlers that you haven't seen in person before? What goes into the process of bringing someone over who's a new face? Are you constantly scouting around different promotions, say Europe or the States or Mexico, whatever else, or where are those recommendations coming from?
Other performers, I think is really important, getting an endorsement. I mean, that's funny. I remember when I was in NXT and talking to Terry Taylor, and he said the only way you can get out of here, he said, is by somebody endorsing you, someone putting their name to you. And I think that goes a long way. Someone saying you got to check this guy out, and it's never failed. Usually if someone's putting their name, if someone indie guy is putting their name to somebody, you go, yeah, And people who have a buzz, they don't have a buzz for no reason, know. But yeah, that's more or less. I don't, like I've said it before, I don't watch as much wrestling as I would have maybe 6-7 years ago. So people endorsing others is quite important.
Do you think the flip kind of reverse of that is true, in that, for my money, it felt to me that when Chris Hero went back across to the States and put the word out on OTT, and just how hot the crowd were, how good the caliber matches were, and how well they were looked after and kind of respected as talent, that kind of opened the gates for an awful lot of people to come over. Do you feel that it can work in both directions, say?
Yeah, it's quite important. As I said, it's quite important to have people like Chris Hero working with other talents and passing it on. That's what I'm really big on. Is LJ is now a coach at the School of Irish Wrestling. He's worked with Pac. He's able to pass on that knowledge that he learned. It's so important. And guys who've worked with Damo, like another guy who just gets wrestling. He fully understands wrestling. He gets it, and that's why he's so good.
It's so clear. I just seeing him work with other guys is a privilege to behold, man. Almost the simplicity and the clarity of it, maybe. But I'm a big fan of pro wrestling. Doesn't need to be the most overly complicated thing in the world. It can be simple and straightforward and tell incredibly compelling stories. Yeah,
I can't say but I remember it was only a couple of weeks ago having a conversation with somebody kind of pretty high up in the wrestling business, and again, he was just all about the selling. He was like, there's some people on the WWE roster, they're great to look at, they don't get it. The people that are making the money are the ones that have learned how to sell.
Here we go, a couple of easy ones to wrap it up. Who do you see as the next breakout stars in Ireland?
I think Renzo and LJ are probably there. I think Boots will be someone that'll be coming up really well. I think Sam will be doing really well. Matthew Smith Bullet will be coming through really well. I think Con Kelly is going to do really well. There, there's so many talents, but I'm pretty apprehensive about putting them out there before they're ready. You know.
Well, it does them no favours.
It does them no favours. But yeah, there's just, and I know I've forgotten so many, and so many now heartbreaking that I didn't mention it. There's a good buzz at the school, you know. There's a lot of really good, talented people with work ethic. That's the most important thing. I mean, as I said, when OTT started, I was, you know, my typical day would be, you know, loading the ring, setting it up, setting the projector up, logistics, you know, going backstage, my own match. I remember I would be putting my boots on into intermission to then have a match for 3 matches later, you know. I think as well, there's some people that just don't comprehend. They don't, and it's not their fault. They just, because things today are, I used to say this as well, like when I was a kid, if I wanted to order a pizza, I had to go and find a phone book. I had to then flick through it, A, B, C, P, you know what I mean? I had to find it. Nowadays, you know, there's an app and there's a pizza at your door, and if they don't deliver it in 20 minutes, there's war.
Yeah.
50, 60 minutes, you'd be no pizza, and you know, maybe they missed the house or something like that, you know? And you'd have to go back to the phone book. Like, same thing again, like if there was a video game, we'd have to wait for the video game to release. You'd have to run down to the shop, you get the video game, run back. And then if you had a Commodore 64, you had to load the thing, you know what I mean? I'm really showing my age. But nowadays, kids are just, you know, bopping it, downloading immediately into this, I'm plug and play. So, I mean, it's amazing that we live in this time, but I think it's also worked it's killed an awful lot of people's work ethic. People just, it's not, as I said, it's not their fault. They don't understand what is needed to be that, you know. Like when I wanted to go to WWE, I was probably 16 stone, but I didn't have really good weight on me, you know. I had to go and kill myself to trim down. I had to take acting lessons. You know what I mean? People today, unfortunately, you know, it's not their fault. It's just the work ethic isn't as strong as it used to be maybe even 10, 15 years ago. It's just a new generation. Things are just easier.
Interesting times. Here we go. 3 ones to finish off. Who, in your opinion, is the GOAT? I guess kind of globally, and then maybe an OTT GOAT.
Globally. I always loved Bret Hart and Kurt Angle. I thought they were probably two. They would be my 2 favorites of all time, I'd say, as wrestlers. And strangely enough, a really strange, weird one, I really loved Mike Awesome as a kid. Wow. I just thought as a big guy, nobody moved like Mike Awesome, and he had in that hardcore style of wrestling, I thought he was quite innovative. The GOAT of OTT will always be, for me, Will Ospreay. I just think he is unbelievable. I just think there's nobody that can, in the wrestling business today, I don't think there's anyone that comes currently, anyone who laces up a couple of their boots does not come close to Will Ospreay, and I think it's by a fair shot. He's unbelievable, and I think he thinks so much ahead, you know. Like I remember one time, I think it was maybe Kota Ibushi, they did some kind of crazy spot and then it landed, and then there's a camera angle where he turns around in the corner and looks into the camera mid-match. I mean, that's Will Ospreay going to a camera guy and saying, I'm going to do this, and will you be in this corner when I do it, because I'm going to look over and I'm going to do this. And then he has to go to the director and film the director. That's, you know, insane. You know, the guy is, and talk about a workhorse. Will Ospreay is doing, you know, New Japan high level. Will Ospreay would the odd time bop me in ideas. Hey, when's your next show? I have an idea. You know, I've seen this kid before and he's at OTT, and I think, you know what I mean? Like, the guy, I always say as well to young wrestlers, you should be clocking in at least 1 or 2 hours a week, where you throw your phone out, you go into a room and you just think about wrestling. Yeah. You think about what you can do to advance yourself. You know what I mean? Nathan Buzzard again and LJ are 2 guys that have really good work ethic, and that's where they are. Yeah. You know what I mean? Leon Slater, you know, Omari, these are the guys that are in the ring before the show, putting their matches together because they want the matches to be the best they can possibly be. You know what I mean? And that's why them boys are busy every single week.
Leighton Buzzard for me is, if I wanted to kind of model up a young wrestler off anyone, it'd be exactly the way about that fella. He'd talk about grabbing by the scruff of the neck, going out there doing everything he needs to do to position himself to be able to capitalise on any opportunity and chasing those opportunities.
And I've said this to him, and he's young, but I'd like to see him slow down a little bit. You know, there's a time to do that massive drop kick off the top, and it's not on every show. You know, you have a bump card, and eventually that bump card gets clicked. It's just the way the body is. You know, you have a certain amount of bumps on your life. and you're just going to get punched out one time. So yeah, like probably work a little bit smarter. That was the thing as well, that going back to Will Ospreay, I could see that he wasn't doing as much craziness anymore, but he'd such good psychology that the matches were still just amazing. Like he's not, even on a Rev Pro show, like in front of maybe 400 people, he's not going and doing something really, really dangerous. He doesn't need to do anymore, but he's such good psychology and such good understanding of the business that he doesn't have to work as hard, and he's still having these absolutely amazing matches. I think that's key as well, because you don't want to get to like your mid-20s and your neck is shot, and it has caught up to Will, and I'm kind of, I hope he's good, because he's a good guy. But you kind of seen there recently where he's saying, I don't know how much the body can hold up. I'm surprised Will got this far without having that question, I don't know off the top of my head what age he is, but like, have a look at it. It's on OTT Demand. I think it's Will Ospreay's very first match in OTT. I think it's I know him and Ryan are involved in the match. I think it's him, Ryan and Pete Dunne. It might be a three-way.
Yeah, that rings a bell, all right.
Just have a look at his style then to where it is now, and he works a lot smarter. There's a bit where he jumps and he goes sideways over the top turnbuckle to the floor, lands on his feet, then rolls back in, and then does a 450. Like that's going to shoot your knees. You can't do that every night. And I think Pac was the same. When me and Pac go back years, and we used to be on some of the same indie shows, but Pac as well would be just doing flip. Another guy, a testament as well, that he's adapted his style to be smarter, but still has absolutely top matches. Again, I wouldn't call him the GOAT of OTT, because he hasn't had as many matches as well. But again, what an absolute insanely talented person.
Yeah, and the two of them both absolute sweethearts to be around.
Yeah. Two absolute, him, Damo,
and
Ospreay, gents.
Yeah. Have you a top 3 OTT matches of all time?
I think I just liked Walter's style, so I think a lot of my matches would be probably Walter Devlin and stuff like that. I just really loved Walter's style. Another guy who completely understands pro wrestling.
And understands his function in pro wrestling as well.
Absolutely, just an incredible mind for the business. So good. I don't know. I could go on about Walter. I just think he's just insanely good. So a lot of matches would be Walter Ospreay. I thought was amazing. I don't think we ever got to do the Jordan Ospreay match, which was a bit of a shame. I really did like Omarion and Sam. I thought that was something that kind of crept in, kind of really new. I always say, I think I said it before in the podcast, and I think it's free on OTT as well. I think it's free on YouTube. We did Ricochet and Jeff Cobb, and so this has been a bit of a funny one, but I write the cards, some would say backwards.
Yes,
so apparently I do, right? So the guys were looking at the card and they thought that they were in the second half of the card, like near the main event. So I was walking backstage. This is when we were in Mandela Hall. And I remember saying to the guys, like, going, "Yous are really relaxed. You do know it, like you're in 2 matches on." And like, "What? We're in the second half." It goes, "No." And then I had to admit that I write the cards backwards. I was like, "You're on in 2 matches." So the 2 guys are like literally lacing their boots as they're going through the curtain. And if you watch that match back, that's why I put that match free on YouTube. That match, for the most part, is completely called out there. Yeah. That is insane. That's 2 people reacting to each other and selling. It's a great match. I'm sure they kind of had, I think they've worked a couple of times before that match, but I always say to young people getting into the wrestling business, watch that match. That's 2 people going slow, and there is 1 or 2 little mess ups. That's 2 people going slow and being able to call a match out of there on the fly, and that's
some would argue a lost. I remember talking to the boys about that on the night, going, if that's all called in the ring, the boys are something else. And then finally, to wrap it all up,
Zach Gibson would also be a GOAT, I think.
Man, nuclear heat. What has been your favourite moment in OTT? I guess from the start to now, whether that's in ring or pulling.
What's your favourite moment been?
Opening that first stadium show.
Yeah, it was kind of a monumental time.
I remember you coming to me before that was booked, going, "What do you think of the stadium? Do you think we could do it?" And I remember buying tickets to TNA there years previously and them kind of half filling it. And I'm going, well, we're kind of, we're capped here at 550, 600. We're turning, like, we could definitely get that to 7, I think, with a special name and push it. Well, you might get to 1100, 1200 in the stadium. And Jesus, if you did that, wouldn't that be amazing? And you had the confidence in yourself and the product to go, I'm gonna back myself here and take a punt on it. And just that magic moment of 2,200 rabid Irish wrestling fans as we broadcast live via satellite around the world, to have got, like, in such a short space of time, to have gone from, say, 250 in the Tivoli to that, a tenfold multiplier on the audience, that feels like it was a hell of an achievement.
Yeah, I always remember as well, I think we did a Flow Slam, it was live on Flow Slam, I think we did a countdown, it's like, we're going live, and I think you'd hyped it up, you said, in 10 seconds we're going to go live on Flow Slam, and we want to show the world what Irish wrestling is about. And if you watch it back as well, you do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I think at that point so much energy hits you in the face, you're just kind of like,
yeah, your
face is just like, whoa, like, they really brought it that night. For me as well, like, being able to pull off the Finn Balor surprise, and that
you favored me on that one as well.
I had to favour everybody because Fergal was like, this cannot get out. There was kind of a weird stipulation that, like, there was a weird stipulation on that we couldn't promote it or hype it. And he's like, it's really important that this can't get out, he says. And I think if you remember, I think he showed up to the venue at like 5 o'clock, and I think the doors were like 6. And I was just so petrified that if it got out, that he'd go, Joe, they're going to pull this, you know. And I think maybe that's the reason why he was so adamant to can't get out, because maybe he was even thinking, like, fuck, they could pull this. But that, I thought, was just an amazing moment. And I remember, that's again, going back to what I'm saying, kind of visualizing the show, I was like, if Finn Balor's music just hits, it's going to get a pop. But what if we start to, like, slightly tease that Finn Balor's here? So if you watch that back, it's free on YouTube. It's kind of like we start doing this bump, 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 and then people are kind of figuring out, like, people are like going, by like 10 seconds and like going, this looks like Finn Balor, but there's no fucking way he's here. You know what I mean? So you're kind of setting people to kind of get excited, and then you just, boom, you hit the music, and it was, again, magic. I think a lot of the Zach Gibson moments as well, and the Tivoli, just being able to see someone being able to generate so much heat and emotion was amazing. Seeing Will Ospreay kind of get to work with some of the younger guys has been amazing. I think I said the Sam O'Mari. I think the Sam O'Mari thing was kind of a great achievement, to kind of see that you're booking. We'd kind of like looked back on trying to achieve that, and to see it being able to be pulled off. I thought it was really, it was really satisfying to see that we kind of achieved that. It was nice.
It's excellent. Well, look, that's all the questions we have on our magical list. It's been great to chat to you, kind of get insight on a whole lot of stuff. It's a very exciting time for OTT. I say, like, this talk of OTT 2.0 in the ring, or whatever else, it's not just an angle. It's a real new push that feels like there's a real energy and drive around it, and it's a very exciting time to be around the company. It's just, continue on driving, trying to, which was always the plan, trying to bop out the smaller shows so the younger guys are kind of getting experience. It's like a comedian. Comedians go out there, Dave Chappelle's, do the smaller shows to kind of see what's hitting, what's not hitting, and that's unfortunate that the younger guys ain't going out there. Like, I said it to Limo, Limo has a tendency to go too fast in the ring, and then being able to go out there and see a match and then go, I get what you're saying. There's always a saying in wrestling, like, if you think you're going slow down even more. It's and if you go back to that Jeff Cobb Ricochet match, it's two guys just reacting and selling and covering up that they're going slow through selling, and being able to pull off a match kind of more or less on the fly. It's a beautiful thing. Joe Cabray, thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to many more exciting memories being made here in OTT.
I just want to thank as well all the fans for their support. I want to thank as well the roster. I know there's sometimes during this podcast it was probably a bit hard, but like it is an amazing roster, and I'm always so proud of our roster that they work hard, and I'm quite happy as to what Irish wrestling has achieved.
I think you should be. Joe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, man.